At the Christmas dinner. My father said you're a burden to us, get out. Anthony Miller felt his world collapse when his father Robert rose from the table and pointed a finger at him. The family had gathered for Christmas dinner at their simple home in Pittsburgh, but what should have been a night of togetherness turned into the most painful moment in the 26-year-old's life. "You're a burden to us, get out," shouted Robert, his face red with anger as he threw a stack of papers onto the food-laden table. "Enough, I can't stand supporting a bum who only knows how to spend money he doesn't have." Anthony stood frozen, holding his fork with a trembling hand. Beside him, his younger sister Jennifer covered her face with her hands, trying to muffle her sobs. Across the table, his mother Carol also brought her hands to her face, but couldn't hide the tears streaming through her fingers. The bills scattered over the red checkered tablecloth told a story Anthony knew well but never imagined would be revealed that way. Electricity, water, phone, credit card. All overdue, all in the red, all in his name. "Daddy, stop," whispered Jennifer, just 19, trying to rise from her chair. "Anthony is going through a tough time, he'll get himself together." "Tough time?" Robert turned to his daughter, his voice even louder. 2 years, Jennifer. 2 years since he dropped out of medical school and only brought trouble to this house. Anthony wanted to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come out of his throat. His eyes moved around the modest room, past the Christmas tree he had set up himself the week before, the twinkling lights he had bought with his last weekend job's money, the abundant table his mother had prepared with so much care. "And don't think I don't know about the loans," Robert continued, now pulling more papers from his pocket. "Loans taken out in my name without my permission. Do you think I'm a fool, boy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Only the soft sound of the ceiling fans spinning and Carol's muffled sobs filled the room. Anthony looked at his mother, who kept her head down and felt his chest tighten even more. "I can explain," he managed to murmur finally. "Explain what?" Robert slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. "That you're irresponsible? That you destroyed our financial life? That your mother spends sleepless nights worrying about you?" Anthony rose from his chair so quickly it almost tipped over. Unable to face his father's gaze, he ran toward the back door, crossed the small kitchen and went out into the yard. The cool night air hit his face, wet with tears he didn't even know were falling. The yard of the house was simple, with a mango tree at the back and some plants his mother cultivated with so much love. Anthony leaned his back against the wall and let his body slide down to sit on the cold ground. He put his hands over his face and tried to breathe, but it felt like his lungs had forgotten how to work. That's when he heard soft footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw Carol walking slowly toward him, her arms crossed over her chest, her face still marked by tears. "Mom." He began to speak, but she raised her hand, asking for silence. "I know everything," she said quietly, sitting on the ground beside her son. "I've always known." Anthony looked at her without understanding. Carol took a deep breath before continuing. "The tests, my son. You saw my medical tests hidden in the dresser drawer, didn't you?" The world stopped for Anthony. His mother knew he had found out about her illness. She knew that was why he had dropped everything to stay close to her. He knew that every loan, every extra job, every sleepless night had a purpose that went far beyond what his father had imagined. "Mom, You went to Dr. Patricia's office the next day," Carol continued, her voice choked. "You asked to speak with her, wanted to know all the details I was hiding from the family." Anthony's tears fell more heavily. He remembered that day perfectly, 3 months ago, when he had accidentally found his mother's test results thrown in the bottom of a drawer. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 3. He had researched online until the early morning hours, then called the doctor, asking for an urgent conversation. "Why didn't you tell Dad?" he asked. Carol ran her hand through her graying hair, looking at the stars beginning to appear in the dark sky. "Because I know how he is. He would panic, spend money we don't have, do crazy things, and I didn't want to die seeing my family financially destroyed because of me." "You're not going to—" Anthony couldn't finish the sentence. "Not going to what? Say the word. Die." Carol smiled sadly. "Son, we all will one day. The difference is I know roughly when. Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The sound of the back door opening made them both turn. Robert appeared on the threshold, his face still red, but now with a confused expression too. "Carol, you need to come back inside. It's getting cold and you know you can't—" He stopped mid-sentence upon seeing his wife and son sitting on the ground, clearly in the middle of a serious conversation. For a moment, Anthony thought his father would explode again, but Robert just stood still, watching. "Robert," Carol said with a firm voice, "the time has come for you to know the truth." "What truth?" he asked, approaching slowly. Carol stood up with difficulty, and Anthony immediately helped her, holding her arm. Robert noticed his son's caring and protective gesture, so different from the image of the irresponsible young man he had in his head. The truth about why our son dropped out of medical school. The truth about the loans. The truth about why he's always tired, always worried, always— Carol couldn't finish. Her legs wobbled and she started to fall. Anthony caught her in his arms, just in time, preventing her from hitting the ground. Robert ran to help, and together they carried Carol to the living room sofa. "Call Jennifer," Anthony shouted, "and get the blood pressure medicine from the kitchen counter." Robert obeyed without question, running through the house. Jennifer appeared within seconds, her eyes still swollen from crying. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling beside her mother. "She fainted," Anthony explained, checking Carol's pulse. "Probably her blood pressure spiked from all the stress of the argument." Robert returned with the medicine and a glass of water. Anthony gave the pill to his mother, who was starting to regain consciousness. "Let's take her to the hospital," Robert said, grabbing the car keys. "No," Carol murmured, trying to sit up. "It's not necessary. It's just the stress." "Mom, you need to be examined," Anthony insisted. "After what happened today, it's better to make sure everything's okay." Robert looked at his son with a strange expression. There was something in how Anthony spoke, a concern that went beyond normal, a knowledge about his mother's health that seemed too specific. An hour later, they were in the waiting room of Pittsburgh Community Hospital. Carol had been taken for some tests, and the family waited outside. The silence between Robert and Anthony was heavy, filled with unspoken words and still open wounds. Jennifer had gone to buy coffee from the machine in the hallway, leaving father and son alone for the first time since the argument at dinner. "Anthony," Robert began, his voice softer than usual, "I want to understand what's going on." The young man kept his gaze fixed on the floor, his hands clasped between his knees. "You won't believe me even if I explain." "Try." Anthony lifted his eyes and met his father's gaze for the first time in weeks. There was something different there, an openness he hadn't seen in a long time. "Mom is sick, Dad." "Very sick." Robert felt the air leave his lungs. "What do you mean sick?" "She has a type of blood cancer, lymphoma. She's been getting treatment in secret for 6 months. Robert's world collapsed again, but this time for a completely different reason. The pieces began to fall into place in his head. The medical appointments, Carol said, were just routine checkups. The excessive fatigue she blamed on work stress. The new medications that had appeared in the house. "Why didn't she tell me?" he asked, his voice almost inaudible. "Because she wanted to protect you. And the family. She knew you'd do crazy things, spend money we don't have, panic. And you, how did you find out?" Anthony took a deep breath before answering. "I found the test results by chance. I tracked down the doctor, researched the disease, understood she needed special care. That's why I dropped out of medical school, Dad. I couldn't let her face this alone." Robert felt as if he were hearing a story from another planet. The son he had called a bum had sacrificed his dreams to care for his sick mother. And the loans, to pay for alternative treatments that the insurance doesn't cover. Special vitamins, physical therapy, imported medications. Mom asked for secrecy because she didn't want you to feel guilty for not being able to pay. "My God," Robert murmured, putting his hands over his face. "What have I done? What did I say to you today?" Jennifer returned with 3 cups of coffee, but stopped in the hallway upon seeing her father and brother finally talking. She decided to give them a few more minutes before approaching. "Dad," Anthony continued, "I didn't want you to find out like this. Mom made me promise not to tell until she was ready. How much time does she have? Robert asked, though he feared the answer. With the right treatment, the chances are good, but she needs constant care, a special diet, guided exercises, strict medical monitoring. That's why you're always at home. That's why I work overnight and on weekends, to be able to pay for what she needs and still be with her during the day. Robert remembered all the times he had complained about Anthony sleeping in late, not knowing the young man had worked all night. He remembered all the times he had criticized his son for not looking for a real job, not knowing he was doing 3 different jobs to support his mother's treatment. The doctor appeared in the hallway, interrupting the conversation. He was a middle-aged man in a white coat with a serious expression. "Miller family?" he called. Robert and Anthony stood up at the same time. Jennifer rushed over. "How is she, doctor?" Robert asked. "Physically, she's stable. Her blood pressure has normalized, and her vital signs are within parameters. But I need to talk to you about something important." They followed the doctor to a private room. The doctor sat behind a small desk and gestured for them to take the chairs in front of him. "Your wife told me about the situation you're facing at home. She's very worried about the family stress and how it might affect her treatment." "What treatment?" Robert asked, still trying to process all the information. The doctor looked at Anthony, who gave a nod of approval. "Mr. Robert, your wife has been undergoing treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for 6 months. It's a delicate situation, but with good chances of improvement if we maintain proper follow-up." Robert felt his legs go weak. Jennifer held her father's hand, also shocked by the revelation. "What worries me," the doctor continued, "is that emotional stress can significantly worsen her condition. Family arguments, financial worries, any kind of turmoil can interfere with the immune system." "Doctor," Anthony stepped forward, "could you explain to my father about the special care Mom needs?" "Of course. Mrs. Carroll needs a very specific routine. Balanced diet with vitamin supplements, guided light exercises, strict medication at the right times, adequate rest, and most importantly, a harmonious family environment." Robert looked at his son, beginning to understand the magnitude of the sacrifice Anthony had made. "And about the follow-up?" Jennifer asked. "She needs someone who understands the treatment well, who can recognize signs of worsening, who can accompany her to appointments and exams, someone who has studied the disease and knows how to help in daily life." The doctor addressed Anthony directly. "I must say I was impressed with the knowledge you've shown about your mother's case. I rarely see family members so involved and prepared to provide the necessary support." Robert felt a mix of pride and shame. Pride for the son who had dedicated himself so much to his mother, shame for not having noticed anything that was happening. When they returned to the room where Carol was, she was already awake and talking with a nurse. Upon seeing the family enter, her face lit up but soon grew worried upon noticing Robert's heavy expression. "You told him," she said to Anthony. "It was necessary, Mum. We couldn't hide it any longer." Robert approached the bed slowly as if afraid of breaking something fragile. "Carol," he said softly, "why didn't you tell me?" "Because I've known you for 30 years, Robert Miller. I know you would freak out. You'd want to spend money we don't have. You'd work yourself to death to support me, and I didn't want to be another burden in your life." "A burden?" Robert sat on the edge of the bed, taking his wife's hand. "You are my life, Carol. How could you think you'd be a burden?" Tears began to fall from Carol's eyes. "Because we can barely pay our monthly bills, Robert, because Anthony has already dropped everything to take care of me, because I don't want the family to fall apart because of me." "And I thought our son was irresponsible," Robert murmured, looking at Anthony, thinking he was a good-for-nothing who only knew how to cause trouble. "He works 3 jobs, Robert. 3. To pay for my treatment and still manage to be with me during the day." Robert turned to his son, who was leaning against the wall near the window. "3 jobs. Monday through Thursday I work at an auto parts store from 8 to 5, Anthony explained. Friday, Saturday and Sunday I do food deliveries. And 3 times a week I work overnight unloading trucks at the produce terminal market. That's why you're always tired," Jennifer murmured. "And that's why I sleep late on days I can. But I'm always awake when Mom needs to take her medicine, when she has an appointment, when she feels unwell. Robert put his hands over his face, feeling the weight of guilt crush his chest. "My son," he said, his voice choked. "What did I do to you today?" "Dad, you didn't know anything. You can't blame yourself." "Yes, I can." Robert stood up and walked over to Anthony. "I can, and I will. Because a father should notice when his son is suffering. He should see when his son is sacrificing himself for the family." The moment was interrupted when the nurse returned to the room. "Mrs. Carroll, you can be discharged, but you need complete rest for at least 3 days, and no stress or strong emotions." "Don't worry," Robert said firmly. "She'll get all the rest she needs." On the way back home, the car was quiet, but it was a different silence than the one on the way to the hospital. It was a silence of reflection, of people processing discoveries that changed everything. Robert drove slowly, looking in the rearview mirror at Carol resting in the back seat with her head on Jennifer's shoulder. Anthony was in the passenger seat, watching the city pass by the window. "Anthony," Robert broke the silence, "I need to know everything, everything. I want to understand our real financial situation, how much you've been spending on your mother, how I can help." "Dad, you don't need to worry about that right now." "Yes, I do. We're a family, and family solves problems together." Anthony took a deep breath before starting to explain. "Mom's treatment costs about 1,200 Rs a month. Between medications the insurance doesn't cover, supplements, special vitamins, and private consultations with specialists." Robert quickly did the math in his head. His salary as a mechanic at a small shop was 2,500 Rs. With the normal household expenses, there would be nothing left for Carol's treatment. "How do you manage to pay for that?" "The job at the auto parts store gives me 1,000 Rs. The weekend deliveries bring in about 800, and the early morning work at the produce terminal market pays 600, so I can cover Mom's treatment and still have a little left to help at home." "You earn 2,400 Rs?" Jennifer asked from the back seat, impressed. "Yes, but I work practically every day of the week. It's tough, but it's worth it." Robert was in shock. His son earned almost as much as he did, working much more, and still managed to support his mother's treatment. "And college? Do you plan to go back?" "When Mom is better, yes, but for now I can't leave her alone during the day. The chemotherapy sessions leave her very weak." "Chemotherapy?" Robert almost lost control of the car. "It's a milder type of chemotherapy," Carol explained from the back seat. "Once a week. It's not as aggressive as other types of cancer, but it still leaves me tired." Robert pulled the car over to the shoulder and stopped. He put his hands on the steering wheel and took several deep breaths. "Dad, are you okay?" Jennifer asked, concerned. "No," he replied honestly. "I'm not okay. I found out my wife has cancer, that my son is a hero I treated like a slacker, and that I'm the worst husband and father in the world." "Robert," Carol said softly, "you're not the worst anything. You just didn't know what was happening." "But I should have known. A husband should notice when his wife is sick. A father should notice when his son is working himself to death to help the family." Anthony turned to his father. "Dad, you work hard too. You come home tired, worry about the bills, have your own problems to solve. You couldn't have imagined there was this whole other world going on. Don't defend me, Anthony. For God's sake, don't defend me. I don't deserve it." "Daddy," Jennifer leaned forward, putting her hand on her father's shoulder, "now that we all know everything, we'll solve it together. The important thing is that Mom gets better." Robert nodded his head, wiped his eyes, and started the car again. "You're right. Now let's go home, and tomorrow we start a new chapter for our family." When they got home, the Christmas table was still exactly as they had left it hours before. The bills scattered on the checkered tablecloth, the plates with cold food, the Christmas tree blinking its colorful lights as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. In one night, the Miller family had gone through the worst argument of their lives and the biggest revelation they could imagine. Robert helped Carol settle on the living room sofa, placing a blanket over her legs and asking if she needed anything. Jennifer went to the kitchen to warm up the dinner food. Anthony gathered the bills from the table, organizing them into a pile. Leave that, Robert said, approaching his son. Tomorrow we'll sort out the financial part. Dad, some bills are really tight. If I don't pay by the end of the week... I said leave it, Robert repeated, but now with a caring tone. You've carried this burden alone for far too long. They sat at the table again, now with reheated food and a completely different atmosphere. Carol was more animated, relieved she no longer had to hide her condition. Jennifer asked questions about the treatment, wanting to understand how she could help. Robert watched Anthony with a mix of admiration and remorse. Son, Robert said suddenly, tell me about your jobs. I want to know what your routine is like. Anthony hesitated for a moment before speaking. Monday through Thursday, I leave home at 7 in the morning to work at the auto parts store. It's a quiet job. I help customers, organize inventory, do some estimates. The owner, Mr. Mark, is a good person. When I explained I needed time off to take Mom to the doctor, he always understood. And the weekends? Friday, Saturday and Sunday I work for a delivery app. I use the bike you gave me for my 15th birthday. It still works well. Robert remembered the bike, a gift he had given with great pride years ago, never imagining it would become a work tool for his son. And the early morning? 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, I work from 11 at night to 5 in the morning at the produce terminal market. I unload trucks of vegetables and fruits. It's heavy work, but it pays well. That's why you sleep in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Carol said. Exactly. But I always wake up when it's time to take the medicine, Mom. I set the alarm. Robert felt his chest tighten with every detail of his son's routine. Anthony had organized his entire life around taking care of Carol. And your social life? Your college friends? Jennifer asked. There isn't much time for that, Anthony admitted. But I don't mind. The priority is different now. That's not right, Robert said firmly. You're 26. You should be enjoying life, studying, having fun. Dad, there's a time for everything. Now is the time to take care of the family. Robert got up from the table and went to the living room window, looking out at the dark street. Anthony approached him. Dad, you're blaming yourself for no reason. There was no way you could have known. Yes, there was. Robert turned to his son. There was a way to notice you weren't sleeping well. There was a way to see you were always worried. There was a way to notice your mother was more tired, more fragile. But you have your own worries too. Work at the shop is tough, isn't it? Robert sighed. It was true things weren't easy for him either. The shop where he worked had few customers, and the owner had threatened to lay off some employees. Yes, Mr. Mitchell said he might have to let 2 people go by the end of the year. See? You're overwhelmed too. That's why you didn't notice what was happening. Father and son stood in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Anthony, Robert said finally, forgive me for what I said today, for shouting at you in front of your mother and Jennifer. Dad, you didn't know... It doesn't matter. I shouldn't have yelled like that. I shouldn't have called you a burden, a deadbeat. I shouldn't have thrown those papers on the table as if you were a criminal. Anthony felt his eyes well up. It hurt, he admitted. It hurt a lot. Because I was trying to do my best, you know. I was trying to take care of everyone, solve all the problems, and it seemed like nothing I did was right. Robert put his hand on his son's shoulder. You did everything right. More than right. You were our family's hero, and I was too much of an idiot to see it. They embraced there in the living room, a hug that carried months of misunderstandings, pain, and unexpressed love. Carol and Jennifer watched from the table, their eyes also filled with tears. Now tell me something, Robert said, pulling back slightly to look into his son's eyes. How do you know so much about your mother's illness? The doctor said he was impressed with your knowledge. After I found her test results, I spent several nights researching online. I read medical articles, joined forums of people who had the same disease, talked with Dr. Patricia. I wanted to understand everything so I could take care of her the best way possible. And the medications, the schedules. I made a spreadsheet with all the times and dosages. I printed it and put it on the refrigerator. Mom takes 6 different medications, each at specific times. Robert shook his head, impressed by his son's dedication. And the special diet. I researched foods that help with treatment and foods that should be avoided. I made a specific shopping list. That's why sometimes I bring different things from the market that you thought were strange. the expensive vitamins that appeared in the pantry. They're supplements that help strengthen her immune system. The doctor recommended them, but the insurance doesn't cover them. Robert felt smaller and smaller. His son had become an expert in Carol's treatment, had reorganized his entire life, had sacrificed his dreams, and he hadn't noticed anything. "Son," he said with a choked voice, "how can you forgive me?" "Because you're my dad," Anthony replied simply. "And because I know that now that you know everything, you'll help me take care of her." The rest of the evening passed slowly, with the family talking about everything that had been hidden. Carol talked about the chemotherapy sessions she had on Thursdays, always telling Robert it was physical therapy for her back pain. Jennifer revealed that she suspected something was different, but didn't know what. Anthony explained about each job, the financial difficulties, the sleepless nights. Around 2 in the morning, Carol was asleep on the couch, exhausted by the intense night of revelations. Jennifer had gone to her room. Robert and Anthony were cleaning the kitchen together, washing the dishes from the dinner that had started so badly and ended so differently. "Dad," Anthony said, drying a plate, "tomorrow I need to work. It's New Year's Eve, so there will be a lot of deliveries. What time do you leave?" "Around 10 in the morning. I won't be back until night." Robert stopped washing the dishes and looked at his son. "You're not?" "What do you mean?" "You're not working tomorrow. We're going to spend the day talking, organizing our situation, planning how we'll move forward from here." "Dad, I can't miss work. I need the money." "I'll manage. I have some savings set aside for emergencies. I think finding out my wife has cancer and my son is a hero qualifies as an emergency." Anthony smiled for the first time since the evening began. "Are you sure?" "I am. You've worked every day this year, including Christmas. You deserve a day of rest." They finished cleaning the kitchen in silence, each still processing all the night's revelations. When they finished, Robert turned to Anthony. "Son, there's something I want to ask you, but I don't know if it's the right time." "You can ask." "Do you miss medicine? The course, your dreams?" Anthony took a deep breath before answering. "I do. A lot. But I don't regret the choice I made. Mom needed me, and I couldn't abandon her. What if I told you we'll find a way for you to go back to studying? How? I don't have time. We'll figure it out, maybe a night course, maybe by reducing your work hours. I don't know yet, but we'll find a solution." "Dad, that's very complicated. The medical course is full-time, there's no way to do it only at night. Then maybe another course in the healthcare field. Nursing, physical therapy, something where you can apply it to your mother's care and still fulfill your dream of helping people." Anthony felt a pang of hope in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Would you be serious about this?" "Very serious. You gave up your dreams for our family. Now it's our turn to help you achieve them." They hugged again, this time an embrace of hope, of possibilities, of a future that could be built together. The next day, Robert woke up early, even though it was a holiday. He prepared breakfast for the family and gently woke Carol, helping her take her first medications of the day. Anthony was sleeping deeply, exhausted by months of intense routine. "How are you feeling?" Robert asked Carol, sitting beside her on the bed. "Better," she answered, smiling. "Lighter. It was a very heavy burden hiding all this from you. Carol, forgive me for not noticing, for not being present enough to see that you were suffering. Robert, you were doing your best too. I know work isn't easy. I know you worry about money, about the bills, but that doesn't justify having been so blind to what was happening in my own home." Carol took her husband's hand and intertwined her fingers with his. "What matters is that now we know we can face this together, that our family is stronger than we thought." When Anthony woke up, it was already noon. He went down to the kitchen and found his father preparing lunch. "Dad, you didn't have to do that. I could have prepared it. You cook for your mother every day, right? Special food, at the right time, with the ingredients she needs." "Yes. I learned by researching online and talking to a nutritionist I met at the hospital. Today, I'm the one cooking. In fact, I want to learn how to make these special foods for your mother. Can you teach me?" Anthony was surprised by the request. "Of course, Dad. Her food isn't very different from ours. It just has some restrictions and some foods that help with the treatment. They spent the afternoon in the kitchen, with Anthony teaching Robert about Carol's diet. Which seasonings to avoid, which foods gave more energy, how to prepare vitamins in juice form to facilitate absorption. "Wow," Robert said, stirring a pot of special chicken soup. "This is almost a science." "Yes, it is. At first I burned everything, seasoned wrong, but I kept learning. Mum was very patient with me." "And I was complaining that you didn't even know how to fry an egg," Robert murmured, embarrassed. "Dad, stop that. What matters is that now we're going to take care of her together." In the afternoon, Robert called the family for a serious talk in the living room. Carol was more rested, Jennifer had helped with lunch, and Anthony seemed more animated. "I want to reorganize our lives," Robert began. "I want each of you to tell me how I can help more." "Robert," Carol said, "you already help a lot. You work hard to support the house. It's not enough. I want to actively participate in your treatment. I want to take you to your appointments. I want to learn about your medications. I want to cook for you. And your job. I'll talk to your Mr. Mitchell. I'll explain the situation and ask for more flexible hours. If he doesn't understand, I'll look for another job." Jennifer stepped in. "Dad, I can help more too. I can take care of the house on Wednesdays and Fridays when Anthony works overnight. And I," Anthony added, "can teach you everything I learned about Mom's treatment, the medication schedules, the warning signs, how to do the physical therapy exercises." Robert felt a deep emotion seeing his family organizing to face the challenge together. "There's something else," he said. "I want you to go back to school, Anthony." "Dad, we've already talked about this. It's not possible." "Yes, it is. I was thinking, if I can adjust my hours at the shop to be with your mother in the morning, and Jennifer can be with her in the afternoon, you can work less and have time to study at night. But the treatment money, we'll share that responsibility. Each one contributes what they can. You don't have to carry this alone." Carol was moved seeing the plans taking shape. "Are you sure this will work?" "We'll make it work," Robert said with conviction. "One thing I learned yesterday, our family is much stronger than I imagined. The first days of the new year were about adjustment." Robert talked to his Mr. Mitchell and explained the situation. To his surprise, the boss was very understanding and offered more flexible hours. Jennifer rearranged her school schedule to be with her mother in the afternoons. Anthony reduced his delivery work to only Saturdays and Sundays, but not everything was easy. In the first week of January, Carol had a relapse. She spent 2 days with a high fever and extreme fatigue. The whole family mobilized, and it was Anthony who noticed she had taken the wrong medicine at the wrong time. "Mum, this medicine is only for Tuesdays and Fridays," he said, checking the medication. "Today is Thursday. You should have taken the other one." "Oh, my son, I got confused," Carol replied, still weak. Robert realized how complicated it was to manage so many different medications and schedules. "Son, teach me again about these medicines. I want to make sure I understood everything correctly." Anthony took the chart he had made and patiently explained each medication and its purpose again. Robert took notes, asked questions, wanted to understand every detail. In the second week of January, the routine was working better. Robert took Carol to the medical appointment for the first time and was impressed with the knowledge Anthony showed in the conversation with Dr. Patricia. "Doctor," Robert said after the appointment, "my son understands more about my wife's treatment than I do. How did he manage to learn so much?" "Your son is one of the most dedicated caregivers I've ever met," the doctor answered. "He came to me right at the beginning of the treatment, wanted to understand every detail, researched on his own, asks me very pertinent questions. It's rare to see this level of involvement. And the prognosis, how is her progress?" "Very good. Mrs. Carroll is responding well to the treatment, and I believe that's largely due to the special care she receives at home." On the way back, Robert looked at Anthony with an admiration that grew every day. "Son, you saved your mother." "Dad, it wasn't just me. It was the medical treatment. It was—" "No. Listen, the doctor said the home care makes all the difference. Your dedication, your knowledge, your constant presence, you saved your mother." Carol took Anthony's hand from the back seat. "Your father is right, my son. You are my guardian angel." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In February, Anthony received an unexpected proposal. Mr. Mark, the owner of the auto parts store, called him for a private conversation. "Anthony, you know I've always liked your work here." "Thank you, Mr. Mark. I have a proposal for you. My brother has a medical supply distributor here in Pittsburgh. He needs someone trustworthy to work in the sales department." Anthony was interested but hesitant. What kind of work? Visiting hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, selling medical equipment and supplies. The salary is better than here, and the hours are more flexible. You can organize your own visits. "Why are you offering this to me?" "Because I saw how dedicated you were to caring for your mother. I saw the knowledge you gained about medications, treatments. I think you'd be perfect for this field." Anthony was tempted. A job related to the healthcare field with flexible hours and better pay seemed perfect for his situation. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But don't take too long. My brother wants someone to start next month." That evening, Anthony told the family about the proposal. "It sounds like a very good opportunity," Robert said. "Better salary, flexible hours, still in the field you like. And you could learn even more about medications and treatments," Carol added. "That would even help with my care. Do you think I should accept?" "Son," Robert responded, "you spent months sacrificing your opportunities for us. Now that a chance to grow professionally and still help our family has appeared, I think you should embrace it." At the end of February, Anthony started his new job at the medical supply distributor. Mr. Ronald, Mr. Mark's brother, was a friendly man who was impressed with Anthony's knowledge about medications and treatments. "Where did you learn so much about this?" Ronald asked on the first day. "Taking care of my mother who's undergoing cancer treatment." "I understand. Personal experience is worth more than any course." The work turned out to be perfect for Anthony. He visited hospitals and clinics in the morning, came home at lunchtime to check on Carol, and made afternoon visits only when necessary. The salary was almost double what he earned before, and he managed to keep only the weekend delivery job. "See?" Robert said one evening, seeing his son more relaxed and rested. "When we work as a family, things work out." In March, Carol had her best test results since the start of treatment. The doctor was optimistic about her progress. "Mrs. Carroll, the results are excellent. If this continues, we can start spacing out the chemotherapy sessions." The family celebrated the news as if it were a birthday. Robert prepared a special dinner. Jennifer bought a cake. Anthony brought flowers for his mother. "Does this mean I'm really getting better?" Carol asked. "It means your body is responding very well to the treatment, and I believe this is due not only to the medications, but to the loving family environment you have." That evening, Robert made a toast with grape juice. Carol couldn't drink alcohol during treatment. "A toast to our family," he said, "who discovered that love is stronger than any problem. And to Anthony," Carol added, emotional, "who taught us what true dedication means. And to Dad," Jennifer said, "who learned to see with his heart. And to Mom," Anthony concluded, "who taught us that being strong sometimes means asking for help." April brought an unexpected surprise. Anthony received a phone call from an old professor from medical school. "Anthony, this is Professor Henry from anatomy. Do you remember me?" "Of course, Professor. How did you get my number?" "I spoke with some of your former colleagues. I heard you dropped out of school to take care of your sick mother." "That's true. I wanted to talk to you about a possibility. We're starting a technical course in clinical analysis here at the university. It's a 2-year night course aimed at those who already have some knowledge in the healthcare field." Anthony felt his heart race. "Professor, I don't have any certification in healthcare, but I have information that you gained a lot of practical knowledge caring for your mother, and your current job at the medical supply distributor also counts as experience. What about the tuition?" "This course is free. It's a social project of the university. We're selecting people who truly have a passion for healthcare, not necessarily those who can pay." Anthony couldn't believe what he was hearing. When would the classes be? 3 nights a week from 7 to 10. It would leave you free to continue working during the day and taking care of your mother. "Professor, can I think about it?" Of course, but registrations end next week. Call me if you're interested. When Anthony told the family, everyone was thrilled. Son, this is the opportunity you've been waiting for, Robert said. But I'm afraid I won't be able to keep up. It's been over a year since I last studied. You spent a year studying cancer, medications, medical care, Carol argued. I bet you know more about some things than many students. And we'll support you in everything, Jennifer added. When you have classes, we'll organize ourselves to take care of Mom. Robert stood up and put his hand on his son's shoulder. Anthony, a year ago you gave up your dreams for us. Now it's our turn to support your dreams. Are you sure? More than sure, Carol said. You deserve this, my son. You deserve much more than this. Anthony enrolled in the course and was accepted after an interview where he impressed the teachers with his practical knowledge of medications and treatments. In May, he started studying again. The first weeks were challenging. Anthony would come home from work, quickly have dinner, help Carol with her evening medications and rush off to the university. He'd return at 11 at night and still study late. Son, you're killing yourself, Carol said one night, seeing Anthony with his books at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning. I'm fine, Mum, it's just a matter of adjustment. But you need to sleep. You have work early tomorrow. I'm managing everything. Don't worry. Robert appeared in the kitchen in his pajamas. What are you two doing awake? Your son doesn't want to sleep. He's been studying since he got home from college. Robert sat at the table next to Anthony. Son, remember what you told me when I found out about your 3-job routine? What? That you couldn't do everything alone, that you needed the family's help. But this is different. It's my study, my responsibility. No, it's not. Just like taking care of your mother wasn't only your responsibility. We'll help you with your studies too. How? Jennifer can help you with the subjects she's better at. I can take care of your mother on the nights you need to study more. We can form a family study group. Carol smiled, seeing her husband organizing the family's life with such care. Your father is right. We'll all support you. And that's how the Miller family developed a new routine. On the nights Anthony had classes, Robert was responsible for Carol's medications. Jennifer helped her brother with math and English. Carol, who had always been good at biology, helped with subjects related to the human body. Mom, you know a lot about this, Anthony said one night, studying the circulatory system. Honey, when you have a blood disease, you end up learning a lot about how the body works. In June, Anthony had his first college exams. He was nervous but confident. I studied a lot for this, he said at breakfast before leaving for the exam. You'll do well, Robert said, I'm sure. What if I don't do well? What if I can't keep up with the course? Then we try again, Carol answered, as many times as needed. Anthony got excellent grades in all subjects. The teachers praised him for the practical knowledge he demonstrated. Anthony, said the pharmacology professor, you have an understanding of medications that goes far beyond what we normally see in beginning students. It's because I learned by taking care of my mother, Professor. That's life experience. It's worth more than any book. In July, the Miller family celebrated Carol's birthday. She looked excellent. Her hair had grown back after chemotherapy, and the tests showed steady improvement. This was the best birthday of my life, she said during dinner. Why? Jennifer asked. Because it's the first birthday I celebrate, knowing you all know who I really am. I don't need to hide anything anymore. I don't need to pretend I'm fine when I'm not. And it's the first birthday we celebrate as a real family, Robert added, united, honest with each other. Dad, Anthony said, can I ask a question I've always wanted to ask? Of course. Why were you so angry with me for so long? Even before finding out about the loans, Robert took a deep breath. It was a question that deserved an honest answer. Because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid that you would be like me. What do you mean? I always dreamed of studying medicine when I was young, but I didn't have the opportunity, I didn't have the money, I didn't have family support. When you got into college, I was proud, but also scared. Scared of what? Scared that you would give up like I gave up. When you dropped out of the course, I thought you were repeating my story, that you were wasting an opportunity I never had. Dad, I didn't give up. I only stopped temporarily. I know that now. But at the time I could only see my own frustration reflected in you. Carol took her husband's hand. Robert, you never told me you wanted to study medicine. Because it's painful to talk about dreams that didn't come true. But now, seeing our son studying again, I feel like a part of my dreams is also coming true. August brought a new challenge. Carol had to be hospitalized for some more detailed tests. Nothing serious, just a routine checkup, but the family was apprehensive. Everything will be fine, Anthony said, holding his mother's hand in the hospital. Your last tests were great. I know, son, but I still get nervous. Robert was on the other side of the bed, also holding his wife's hand. Carol, remember our honeymoon? When we went to Aspen and you were afraid to ride the cable car? I remember, she smiled. You said that with fear or without fear, you were going to ride it, because you were with me. It's the same thing now. With fear or without fear, we'll face everything together. The tests revealed that Carol was even better than they expected. The cancer was practically inactive, and the doctor mentioned complete remission for the first time. Does that mean I'm cured? Carol asked. It means you're on the right track. We'll continue monitoring, but further reduce the frequency of appointments. The family burst with joy. Hugs, tears of happiness, plans for the future. Mum, now you'll be able to travel, do the things you always wanted, Jennifer said. The first thing I want to do, Carol answered, is to see my son graduate. In September, Anthony was doing very well in his course. His grades were excellent, and he had secured an internship at the hospital lab where Carol was receiving treatment. It's funny, he remarked during dinner, now I work at the same hospital where Mum was treated. Fate has its ways, Robert said. Sometimes paths cross in ways we don't expect. And the best part is that he's learning things he can apply to my care, Carol added. Actually, Mum, now I understand even better why certain tests are done, why some medications are prescribed. I can explain to you more clearly what's happening. October was marked by an unexpected visit. Mrs. Abigail, an elderly neighbor, showed up at the Miller family's house. Hi, Carol. How are you? Fine, Mrs. Abigail. Come in. Have some coffee. Actually, I came here to talk to Anthony. Anthony was studying at the living room table and stood up when he heard his name. Hi, Mrs. Abigail. How can I help you? I want to thank you, my dear. Thank me for what? For everything you did for me this past year. You think I didn't know? Anthony was confused. I didn't do anything, Mrs. Abigail. Didn't do anything. She turned to Carol. Your son went to the market for me every week when I had my leg in a cast. Took my prescriptions to the pharmacy. Helped me carry my groceries. Carol looked at Anthony in surprise. He never told me that. And that's not all, Mrs. Abigail continued. When my little grandson got sick, it was Anthony who explained to me about the medicines the doctor prescribed, taught me how to give them at the right time, calmed me down when I was desperate. Robert was also paying attention to the conversation. Mrs. Abigail, when did this happen? Throughout the whole year. Your son always stopped by my house before going to work in the early morning, asked if I needed anything, if everything was okay. Anthony, Carol said, you did all that and never told us. It was no big deal, he replied, embarrassed. Mrs. Abigail has been our neighbor for years, always good to our family. No big deal, Mrs. Abigail laughed. My dear, you saved me several times. When I got sick in the middle of the night and didn't know what to do, it was you who took me to the hospital. Robert felt his chest swell with pride with every word from the neighbor. And there's more, she went on. Talking to other neighbors, I found out it wasn't just me. Anthony helped Mrs. Rose with her electricity bill that she didn't know how to calculate, helped Mr. John understand his medical prescriptions, helped the family down the street when they needed information about medications. Carol stood up and hugged her son. Why did you never tell us any of this? Because it wasn't important. They were just little helps. Little helps? Robert approached. Son, you were taking care of our family, working 3 jobs, studying about your mother's illness, and still found time to help the neighbors. It was on the way. It didn't cost me anything. Mrs. Abigail took Anthony's hands in hers. My dear, you are an angel. You may not believe it, but you are. And I came here today because I want your family to know what kind of extraordinary person you have at home." After Mrs. Abigail left, the family sat in silence for a few minutes. "Son," Robert finally said, "I thought I knew you, but every day I discover new things about you." "Dad, I just did what I thought was right." "Exactly. You always did what you thought was right, even when no one was watching, even when no one would know." Carol sat down next to her son on the couch. "Anthony, you make me so proud, not just as a son, but as a person, as a human being." "Mom, you don't need to exaggerate. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth. You are the most generous person I know." In November, Anthony received an unexpected offer during his internship. The lab supervisor called him for a conversation. "Anthony, I'm very pleased with your work here." "Thank you, Dr. Frederick. I have a proposal for you. When you complete your technical course, I'd like to hire you as a permanent employee of the laboratory." Anthony was speechless. "Doctor, I still have one more year of coursework." "I know, but I want to ensure you won't work elsewhere. I rarely see someone with so much practical knowledge and such care for patients." "Practical knowledge? You understand medications in a way that goes beyond what's learned in books. You have the sensitivity to deal with people going through difficult times. That's rare." "It's just that I learned by taking care of my mother." "Exactly, and that has made you an exceptional professional." When Anthony told the family about the offer, everyone was moved. "Son, this is wonderful," Robert said. "A guaranteed job in the field you love." "And at the same hospital where I was treated," Carol added. "It's as if everything has fallen perfectly into place." "I still can't believe it," Anthony confessed. "A year ago I was desperate, thinking I had lost my future. Now it seems I've found an even better path." "You didn't lose your future," Robert corrected. "You built it differently, more difficult, but more solid." December arrived with a completely different atmosphere from the previous year. Carol was practically cured. Anthony was achieving his professional dreams. Robert had become a more present and understanding father, and Jennifer had learned the value of family unity. "You know what I want to do this year?" Carol said one week before Christmas. "What?" Jennifer asked. "I want to prepare the most beautiful Christmas dinner we've ever had. I want to celebrate everything we've been through, everything we've learned, everything we've achieved." "Mom, did your doctor clear you to exert yourself in the kitchen?" Anthony asked, concerned. "Son, I'm fine, and besides, I won't do it alone. We'll do it together, as a family." Robert stood up and hugged his wife. "Carol, this will be the most special Christmas of our lives," and it truly was. On December 24th, the Miller family home was full of delicious aromas, colorful lights, and an atmosphere of happiness that everyone thought they would never feel again. The table was set with the same red checkered tablecloth from the previous year, but now it represented unity instead of conflict. The same dishes, the same Christmas tree, but with completely different meanings. "Before we start eating," Robert said, standing up from his chair, "I want to make a toast." He picked up his glass of grape juice. Carol still couldn't drink alcohol, so the whole family had switched to juices, and addressed the family. "1 year ago, at this same table, I said words I'm deeply ashamed of. I called my son a burden, a slacker. I yelled at him, humiliated him in front of the family." "Dad, you don't need to bring that up," Anthony said. "Yes, I do. Because I want us all to remember how easy it is to judge without knowing the truth. How easy it is to hurt those we love most when we're blinded by anger or frustration." Robert turned directly to Anthony. "My son, you are the hero of our family. Not only because you cared for your mother with such dedication, but because you did it with love, without complaining, without expecting recognition. You sacrificed your dreams for ours, and now I'm seeing that you found an even better path." "Dad, let me finish," Robert raised his hand. "Carol, my love, you are the bravest woman I know. You faced a serious illness while protecting our family from worry. Jennifer, my daughter, you showed us that even being the youngest, you can be wise and mature when needed." He paused for a moment, his voice choked with emotion. "And I learned that being a father isn't just about supporting the house financially. It's about being present, paying attention, supporting your children's dreams instead of projecting our own frustrations onto them. Robert, Carol said, also emotional, you've become the man I always knew you could be. So my toast is this: to the love that overcomes any problem, to the family that grows stronger through hardships, and especially to forgiveness, which has the power to heal any wound. Everyone raised their glasses and toasted. This time, there were no tears of pain, but tears of gratitude. During the Christmas dinner, they talked about plans for the future. Anthony told them about the subjects he would have next semester. Carol talked about the places she wanted to visit now that she was better. Robert mentioned the possibility of taking an advanced automotive mechanics course. Jennifer said she wanted to study nursing, inspired by the family's story. You know what moves me the most, Carol said, while enjoying dessert. It's seeing that our family not only survived a crisis, but transformed into something better. Better how? Jennifer asked. More united, more genuine, more loving. Before everyone lived in their own world. Now we all live in the same world. And the most important thing, Anthony added, is that we learned we can trust each other, that we don't have to carry our problems alone. Robert looked around the table, seeing his family complete, healthy, happy. Do you know what I discovered this year? What? Everyone asked in chorus. That family isn't just who you're born with. Family is who chooses to stay together in difficult times, and you chose to stay together when everything seemed lost. When the dinner ended, they sat in the living room to exchange gifts. They were simple gifts, but full of meaning. Robert gave Carol a photo album with family moments throughout the year, including pictures of her smiling in the hospital, photos of Anthony studying, pictures of everyone together. Carol gave Robert a certificate for enrollment in a mechanics course he had always wanted to take. Jennifer gave Anthony a stethoscope with a small engraved plaque, "To the best caregiver in the world," and Anthony gave the whole family a letter he had written. "Can you read it out loud?" he asked. Robert opened the letter and began to read. "Dear family, a year ago I thought my life was over. I had dropped out of college, was working too much, hiding secrets, and felt like I was disappointing all of you. Today I understand that nothing was over. It was just beginning in a different way. Dad, thank you for learning to see me as I really am. Thank you for becoming my partner instead of my judge. Thank you for supporting my dreams. Mom, thank you for letting me take care of you. It was the most difficult and most rewarding experience of my life. It made me discover that my calling isn't just medicine, it's caring for people. Jennifer, thank you for always believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. This year, I learned that it doesn't matter how many times life knocks us down. What matters is having a family that helps us get back up. I love you more than words can express. Your son and brother, Anthony." When Robert finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Son," he said, hugging Anthony, "we're the ones who thank you for teaching us what true family love is." The night ended with everyone sleeping in the living room, scattered on the sofa and armchairs, like they used to when the kids were little. Carol in Robert's lap, Anthony and Jennifer sharing the big sofa. "You know what's the most amazing thing?" Carol murmured, almost asleep. "What?" Robert asked softly. "A year ago, on this date, I thought this might be my last Christmas. Today I know I'll still have many Christmases with you." "So many indeed," Robert confirmed, kissing his wife's forehead. "And they will all be special," Anthony added from the couch, "because now we know the value of being together." The new year of 2025 arrived with the Miller family more united than ever. Anthony continued his studies with excellence, Carol maintained her complete remission, Robert became the father he always wanted to be, and Jennifer grew up seeing the example of a family that overcomes any obstacle with love. 6 months later, when Anthony graduated from the technical course, the entire family was present at the ceremony. Carol was radiant, with fully grown hair and renewed health. Robert cried with pride watching his son receive the diploma. Jennifer shouted and applauded non-stop. "Miller family!" the school principal called on stage. "I would like to ask the clinical laboratory technician Anthony Miller to come here for a special tribute." Anthony went up on stage, not understanding what was happening. "Anthony," the principal said into the microphone, You were chosen by the teachers as the best student in the class, not only for your excellent grades, but for your dedication, your practical knowledge, and especially for your story of overcoming. The audience gave a standing ovation. Anthony looked at his family in the audience and saw Robert holding Carol, both crying with happiness. But the tribute is not just for you, the principal continued. It's for your entire family, who showed that together we can overcome any challenge. Professor, Anthony said into the microphone, may I call my family up here? Robert, Carol, and Jennifer went up on stage and all hugged together under the emotional applause of the entire audience. Thank you, Anthony said into the microphone, visibly moved. Thank you for this tribute, but mainly thank you for giving me the chance to prove that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to achieve our dreams. And it's never too late for a family to reunite. He looked at his father. Dad, you taught me that recognizing our mistakes is the first step to becoming better people. He looked at his mother. Mom, you taught me that true strength is protecting those we love, even when it means carrying the burden alone. He looked at his sister. Jennifer, you taught me that age doesn't determine wisdom, and that sometimes the youngest can teach the oldest. And he finished by looking at the whole family. But most of all, you taught me that family isn't perfect. Family is real. It's made of people who make mistakes, who suffer, who are afraid, but who choose to stay together and fight together. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years later, Anthony was working as supervisor of the laboratory where he had interned. Carol was completely cured, had returned to work and became a volunteer in a cancer patient support group. Robert had taken the advanced mechanics course and opened his own small workshop. Jennifer was in her first year of nursing school. On a Sunday afternoon, they were all gathered in the backyard of the house, where Carol cultivated her plants and Robert had built a small barbecue area. Do you remember that Christmas night? Carol asked, watering her flowers. How could we forget? Robert replied, stirring the coals. It was the night our family almost destroyed itself and ended up saving itself. Sometimes I think how our life would be today if things had happened differently, Jennifer commented, studying for a test at a plastic table. Differently how? Anthony asked, helping his father with the barbecue. If you hadn't found out about Mom's illness, if she had told the truth from the beginning, if Dad hadn't exploded that night. But things happened exactly as they had to happen, Carol said, approaching the family. Every mistake, every hardship, every decision brought us here. Mom is right, Anthony agreed. If I hadn't gone through all that, maybe I wouldn't have discovered my true calling. If Dad hadn't exploded, maybe we'd never have had this honest conversation that changed everything. Robert stopped tending the barbecue and looked at his son. Anthony, can I ask you something I've always wanted to know? Of course, Dad. Have you really forgiven me, truly, for what I did to you that night? Anthony put down the skewer he was holding and turned to his father. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Go ahead. That night, when you called me a burden and told me to leave, I felt a pain I'd never felt in my life. Robert lowered his head, feeling the weight of guilt again. But do you know what I felt afterward? Anthony continued. What? Relief. Relief? Yes, because the truth was finally going to come out. Because I was tired of carrying that burden alone, of lying, of hiding. When you exploded, I knew we couldn't hide anything anymore. Robert raised his eyes and looked at his son. And you know what else? Anthony went on. That night I saw my father as a human being for the first time, not as the perfect hero I thought he was, nor as the villain he thought he was, as a real man with fears, frustrations, problems. And that was good. It was liberating, because it allowed me to truly forgive him. It's hard to forgive a hero or a villain, but it's easy to forgive a human being. Carol approached and put her arms around the two men in her life. Do you know what's most beautiful in this whole story? What? Father and son asked together. It's that you two found each other. The father found the son he always had but didn't know how to see. The son found the father he always wanted but thought didn't exist. Jennifer closed the book and joined the group. And I found a real family. Not that perfect movie family, but a real family, one that has problems and solves them together. They stayed there, embracing for a few minutes, listening to the birds singing in the backyard trees, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun, enjoying the simplicity of that perfect moment. "You know what I want to do?" Robert said suddenly. "What?" everyone asked. "I want to tell our story to other people, to other families going through similar problems." "How so?" Carol asked. "Carol, how many families out there are living with misunderstandings like ours? How many parents are judging their children without knowing the truth? How many people are hiding problems to protect their family?" Anthony became thoughtful. "You're right. At the hospital where I work, I see many families in difficult situations. Often the problem isn't just the illness, it's the lack of communication." "I could give talks at my doctor's support group," Carol suggested. "Talk about how important it is for the family to be united during treatment. And I could write about our experience in college," Jennifer added. "Do a project on family dynamics in crisis situations." Robert smiled, seeing how each family member wanted to turn their experience into something useful for others. "Then it's decided. We'll share our story. Not to show off, but to help." And that's how the Miller family started giving talks together. Robert spoke about how prejudices can blind a father. Carol spoke about the importance of trusting your family. Anthony spoke about how sacrifices can turn into opportunities. Jennifer spoke about how young people can contribute to solving family problems. Their talks became successful in the Pittsburgh community. They were invited to speak at schools, hospitals, churches, and community centers, always together, always honest about their mistakes and successes. "Do you know the question I get asked most after our talks?" Robert commented one evening following a particularly moving presentation. "What?" Carol asked. "If our story is really true, if all this actually happened to us." "And what do you tell them?" Anthony wanted to know. "That it's all too real. So real that it still hurts when I remember some parts, but it's also so real that it fills my heart with gratitude when I see how far we've come." 3 years after the famous Christmas dinner, the Miller family was experiencing a special time. Anthony had been promoted to lab coordinator and was engaged to Patricia, a nurse he'd met at the hospital. Carol had been in complete remission for 2 years and was working as a volunteer counselor. Robert had his own thriving workshop. Jennifer was in her 3rd year of nursing school and already doing internships. "You know what I want to do this Christmas?" Carol said during a Sunday lunch. "What?" everyone asked, already aware she always had special ideas for the holidays. "I want to invite Mrs. Abigail, Mrs. Rose, Mr. John, the family from down the street, all the people Anthony helped during that difficult period." "Mom, you don't have to," Anthony protested. "Yes, I do. I want them to see how well you're doing now. I want to thank them for recognizing your kindness when even we didn't know. And I want to invite Dr. Patricia too," Robert added, "and Professor Henry, who gave Anthony the opportunity for the course. And Mr. Mark and Mr. Ronald, who gave him work," Jennifer suggested. "Do you all want to turn our house into an auditorium?" Anthony laughed. "We want to turn our house into a symbol of gratitude," Carol replied. "Gratitude for all the people who helped us get here." And so, the Christmas of 2027 became a grand celebration at the Miller family home. More than 20 people gathered in the backyard, under a tarp Robert had stretched between the trees. Mrs. Abigail brought her famous French toast. Mr. John brought his guitar and played old songs. Dr. Patricia shared how impressed she'd been with Anthony's dedication. Professor Henry spoke about how rarely he saw such determined students. "Miller family," Mr. Mark said, standing up with a glass in hand. "You've taught us that problems exist to make us grow, not to destroy us. And that family is the foundation of everything," Mr. Ronald added. "When the family is well, everything works." Patricia, Anthony's fiancée, asked to speak. "I want to thank you for raising the man I'm going to marry. The Anthony I met at the hospital is caring, dedicated, responsible. Now I understand where all that comes from." "It comes from a lot of suffering," Anthony replied, embracing his fiancée. "But mostly it comes from a lot of love." Robert stood up to make the family's traditional toast. "Friends, family, loved ones." 4 years ago, on this same date, I made the biggest mistake of my life as a father. I judged my son without knowing the truth. I hurt the one I love most because of my own blindness." He paused and took a deep breath. "Today, looking at all of you here, I understand that mistake was necessary. It was the mistake that led us to the truth. It was the fall that taught us how to fly. Robert," Carol stood up and stood beside her husband, "I want to thank you too. Thank you for learning that protecting the family sometimes means trusting the family. And I," Anthony joined his parents, "want to thank you for discovering that sacrificing our small dreams sometimes leads us to big dreams. And I," Jennifer completed the group, "want to thank you for learning that family isn't about never making mistakes. Family is about knowing how to apologize and start over." Everyone toasted under the December stars, surrounded by the love that had been born from pain and grown in hope. 5 years after the Christmas dinner that changed everything, Anthony and Patricia were married and expecting their first child. Carol was a doting grandmother even before the baby was born. Robert had expanded the workshop and hired 2 employees. Jennifer was graduating from nursing school and already had a job offer at the same hospital where Anthony worked. "Sometimes I wonder if our baby will believe us when we tell our story," Patricia said, stroking her 6-month belly. "They'll believe it because they'll see every day how united we are," Anthony replied, kissing his wife's forehead. They were in the living room of the Miller family home, where they now gathered every Sunday for lunch. The tradition had started naturally after Anthony's marriage and was now sacred to everyone. "Uncle Anthony will have to teach our nephew how to play soccer," Jennifer said, organizing family photos in a new album. "And Grandma Carol will teach them how to cook," Robert added, entering the room with Carol, who carried a tray of coffee. "And Grandpa Robert will teach them how to fix cars," Carol laughed, handing out the cups. "You've already planned the child's whole life," Anthony protested, laughing. "It's just that we have so much love to give," Carol explained. "So much love that we held on to during those difficult years and now want to spread it around." "Speaking of spreading love," Robert said, "we received an invitation to give our talk in New York at a family therapy conference." "Really?" Jennifer perked up. "Our story reached New York?" "It did. And the most interesting thing is that the person who invited us is a psychologist who heard our talk here in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. She said our story helped her save 3 marriages." Anthony was moved by the news. 3 families that didn't fall apart because of our experience. "That's what makes me proudest," Carol said, "knowing that our pain has become medicine for other people. And knowing that our mistakes have become lessons for other families," Robert added. The afternoon passed with everyone planning the trip to New York, organizing the presentation, discussing which parts of the story were most important to highlight. "Do you know which part of our story moves people the most?" Patricia asked. She always attended the family's talks and observed the audience's reactions. "Which one?" everyone wanted to know. When Robert tells about the moment he apologized to Anthony in front of everyone at work, Robert smiled, remembering that day. "It was one of the hardest and most liberating moments of my life." "Hard why?" Carol asked. "Because admitting our mistakes in public hurts our pride, but liberating because I was finally being the father my son deserved to have. And the part that moves me the most," Anthony said, "is when people come to talk after the presentations, when they say they're going to go home and talk to their children or call their parents or be more honest with their family. That's what makes it all worthwhile," Jennifer agreed, "knowing that our story is helping to write other stories." That night, after Anthony and Patricia went home, Robert, Carol, and Jennifer stayed talking in the living room. "Mom," Jennifer said, "can I ask you something I've always wanted to ask?" "Of course, dear." "Did you really believe you were going to pass away during the treatment?" Carol grew serious for a moment. "There were times, yes, especially at the beginning, when I didn't know how my body would react to the treatment. And what did you think about during those times?" "I thought about you all, about how to leave you prepared to move forward. That's why I hid everything. I thought if you didn't know, you'd suffer less." Robert took his wife's hand. "And now you know you were wrong." "I know. I know love doesn't lessen suffering by hiding the truth. Love lessens suffering by sharing the burden. That's what I'm going to teach my children," Jennifer said. That family is for sharing burdens, not for hiding problems. And that it's always possible to start over, Carol added. No matter how many mistakes we make, it's always possible to fix them. And that forgiveness isn't forgetting what happened, Robert concluded. Forgiveness is remembering what happened and choosing to love anyway. 7 years after the Christmas dinner that changed everything, the Miller family was gathered to celebrate the first birthday of Peter, son of Anthony and Patricia. The house was full of blue and white decorations, balloons, and the smile of a child who was taking his first steps. "Grandpa Robert, look!" Peter shouted, letting go of the table and walking 3 steps into his grandfather's arms. "My grandson is a champion," Robert said, picking up the boy and spinning with him. Carol filmed everything with her phone, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "He looks just like Anthony when he was little," she said to Patricia. "Stubborn, determined, never gives up." "I hope he's like his father in other ways too," Patricia replied, watching her husband play with their son on the floor. The kindness, the generosity, the ability to care for people. Jennifer, now graduated and working at the hospital, came running from the university where she had defended her thesis. "Everyone I passed," she shouted, entering the house. "My thesis was approved with the highest grade." "How wonderful!" Carol ran to hug her daughter. What was it about again? The importance of family communication in health crisis situations. I used our story as a case study. Robert stopped playing with Peter and looked at his daughter. "You used our story in college." "I did, with your permission. And you know what my advisor said?" "What?" "That our story is a perfect example of how a family can transform through crisis, that it should be studied in psychology and family therapy courses." Anthony approached, carrying Peter in his arms. "Jennifer, does this mean our story will help even more people?" "It means it will become study material, that other professionals will learn from our experience to help other families." Carol was deeply moved. "Are you saying our suffering will become scientific knowledge?" "I'm saying you turned pain into wisdom, and that this wisdom will continue helping families for many years." Robert sat on the couch, still processing the information. "Jennifer, when you were working on this thesis, what stood out most to you while studying our own story?" "What impressed me most was realizing how each of you was right from your own perspective, but everyone was blind to the other's point of view." "What do you mean?" "Dad, you were right to worry about the family's finances. Anthony was right to take care of Mom. Mom was right to want to protect the family from worry. Everyone was doing what they thought was right, but no one was talking to anyone." "And what was the conclusion of your thesis?" Patricia asked, interested. "That communication is like oxygen for families. Without it, even the strongest love can suffocate." That night after the party, when Peter was already sleeping and Patricia was putting the boy in the stroller to take home, the family gathered on the porch for their traditional post-celebration conversation. "Peter will grow up hearing our story," Anthony said, stroking his sleeping son's head. "And he'll learn from an early age that family is for sharing joys and sorrows," Carol added. "That there are no problems too big when we face them together," Robert said. "And that true love isn't the kind that never goes through difficulties," Jennifer completed. "It's the one that survives difficulties and comes out stronger." They stood there on the porch watching the stars, listening to the sound of crickets, feeling the cool night breeze, knowing they had built something special together. "Do you know what makes me proudest?" Carol said after a long silence. "What?" everyone asked. "That Peter will grow up in a family that knows how to solve problems, that when he has his teenage crises or his young adult difficulties, he'll have grandparents, parents, and an aunt who know how to talk, who know how to listen, who know how to help, and who know how to ask for help when they need it," Robert added. "He'll grow up knowing that making mistakes is part of life," Anthony said, "but that it's always possible to fix mistakes with love and honesty. And most importantly," Jennifer finished, "he'll grow up knowing that family isn't perfect, family is real, and that real family is much more beautiful than perfect family." 10 years after the famous Christmas dinner, the Miller family was gathered for a very special occasion. Peter, now 3 years old, had gained a little sister, Sophia, 6 months old. The house was full again, now with 4 generations of the family. Anthony, at 36, had become director of the hospital laboratory. Patricia worked as head nurse of pediatrics at the same hospital. Jennifer, at 29, was married to Richard, a doctor she had met during work, and was pregnant with their first child. Robert, at 65, had retired and dedicated himself entirely to his grandchildren and the workshop, which was now more of a hobby than a necessity. Carol, at 62, had been in complete remission for 7 years and worked as a volunteer family therapist. "Grandma Carol," Peter said, climbing onto his grandmother's lap, "tell the story of Christmas when Daddy was angry." Carol laughed. Peter loved hearing adapted versions of the family story. "Oh, my love, you already know that story, but I like it. Tell it again." "All right," Carol began, settling her grandson on her lap. "Once upon a time there was a family that loved each other very much, but didn't know how to talk properly. And then Grandpa Robert got angry with Daddy." Peter continued, knowing the story by heart. "He did, because he was worried about the family and didn't understand that Daddy was worried too. And then Grandma was sick, but didn't tell anyone." "That's right, because she thought she was protecting everyone that way. And then everyone fought. They fought. But do you know what happened after? They talked. They talked. And they discovered that everyone loved each other very much, but each was trying to protect the others in their own way. And they lived happily ever after?" "They lived happily ever after," Carol confirmed, kissing her grandson's forehead. Robert entered the room at that moment, carrying Sophia in his arms. "Telling our story again?" he asked, smiling. "Peter always asks," Carol explained. "It's a good story," Peter said seriously. "It teaches that family has to talk." "Exactly, my champion." Robert sat down beside his wife. "And that it's never too late to ask for forgiveness." Anthony and Patricia arrived from the kitchen, where they were preparing the Sunday lunch that had become the family's sacred tradition. "Peter, come help set the table," Patricia called. "Coming, Mum, I'm listening to a story." "How about if we tell a new story?" Anthony suggested. "What story?" "The story of how you're going to have a little cousin." Peter looked at Jennifer's belly as she entered the room with Richard. "Aunt Jennifer has a baby in her belly." "Yes, she does," Jennifer confirmed, stroking her 5-month belly. "And will it be a boy or a girl?" "It will be a boy, just like you." "And will I teach him to play ball?" "You will," Richard answered. "And to tell family stories, and to talk when he has problems," Carol added. "And to ask for help when he needs it," Robert completed. "Our family is growing," Peter said, counting on his fingers. "Me, Sophia, Aunt Jennifer's baby. And everyone will know our story," Anthony said. "They'll know how important it is to be honest, talk about problems, and never give up on family." Patricia was moved watching the scene. Sophia sleeping in her grandfather Robert's arms, Peter on grandmother Carol's lap, pregnant Jennifer being cared for by her husband Richard, Anthony looking at the whole family with love in his eyes. "Do you know what moves me the most?" she said. "What?" everyone asked. "It's seeing that Peter and Sophia will grow up in a family that knows how to love, that when they have their own crises, they'll know family is a safe place to fall and the right place to get back up. And they'll know there's no problem too big," Jennifer added, "because they'll have the example that everything can be solved with love and conversation. And most importantly," Carol said, holding Peter tighter, "they'll know that being family doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means making mistakes and knowing how to fix them." That Sunday's lunch was special, as all the Miller family meals had become. Conversations about work, plans for the children, memories of the past, hopes for the future. "Everyone," Richard said during dessert, "I wanted to thank you for something." "What?" Robert asked. "For accepting me so well into the family, and for showing me how a real family works." "What do you mean?" Carol wanted to know. "My parents divorced when I was a teenager. I never saw an example of a united family that talks, that solves problems together. You taught me that this exists. And now you'll raise your child in this model," Anthony said. "I will. With your help." "With all the help you need," Robert assured. "Because now you're family too." Jennifer was moved seeing how her husband had been welcomed. Do you know our story is being used in family therapy courses at 3 universities in New York? Really? Carol was impressed. Really? My former professor always calls me with updates. She says you're the perfect example of how a family can transform through crisis. And how communication can save relationships, Richard added. I use that in my work too. When I see families in crisis at the hospital, I tell part of your story. Our story becoming therapy, Robert laughed. Who would have thought? It's because you turned suffering into wisdom, Patricia explained. And wisdom needs to be shared. In the afternoon, while the children slept and the adults rested in the living room, Robert had an idea. Guys, what if we wrote a book? A book? Carol became interested. Our complete story. From the beginning, with all the details, all the emotions, all the lessons we learned. What for? Anthony asked. To help even more families. Imagine how many people could benefit from reading our complete experience. Jennifer got excited about the idea. I could help write it, with my experience in the health field and knowledge of our story. And I could contribute with the medical part, Richard suggested. And I with the emotional part, Patricia added. Carol looked around, seeing the whole family excited about the project. Do you really think our story could help other people? Mom, Anthony answered, if it helped 3 universities, if it helps hospital patients, if it helps families in our talks, why wouldn't it help in book form? Because books reach further, Robert explained. They can reach families who would never attend a talk, who would never seek help. And they can last forever, Jennifer completed. Peter, Sophia, and the baby that's coming will be able to read our story when they're adults. The book idea became a family project. Everyone contributed with their perspective of the story. Robert wrote about the experience of being a father who made mistakes and learned from them. Carol wrote about hiding a serious illness and discovering the importance of trust. Anthony wrote about sacrificing dreams and discovering new paths. Jennifer wrote about being the youngest who helped the family reunite. 2 years later, the book From Shout to Embrace, How a Family Found Love Through Crisis was published by a small publisher in Pittsburgh. It didn't become a national bestseller, but it was very well received in the local community and in family therapy circles. The coolest thing, Carol said, flipping through the book for the first time, is that now our story has permanence. It will keep helping people even when we're no longer here. And our grandchildren will be able to understand where they came from, Robert added. They'll know they're part of a family that knew how to rebuild itself. And most importantly, Anthony concluded, they'll know that true love isn't the kind that never faces problems. It's the kind that grows through problems. 15 years after the Christmas dinner that changed everything, Peter was 8, Sophia 5, and Gabriel, Jennifer and Richard's son, was 2. The Miller family had grown, but kept its traditions and values. Peter was a curious child who loved hearing family stories and already showed interest in caring for people, always offering band-aids when someone got hurt. Sophia was artistic like her great-grandmother Carol, always drawing family portraits. Gabriel was the affectionate baby everyone spoiled. One Sunday afternoon, Robert, now 70, was in the backyard teaching Peter how to plant tomatoes. "Grandpa," Peter asked, playing in the dirt with a small shovel, "why did you fight so much that Christmas?" Robert stopped planting and looked at his grandson. "Because we didn't know how to talk to each other, Peter. But you lived in the same house." "Living in the same house doesn't mean really talking. Everyone kept their problems to themselves, thinking they were protecting others." "And that didn't work?" "It didn't, because the problems got too big, and when they exploded, they hurt everyone." Peter thought for a moment, focused on planting the little tomato seedling. "Grandpa, do you regret fighting with Dad?" Robert stopped what he was doing completely. "Peter, that's a very important question. Can I answer honestly?" "Yes. I regret hurting your father. I regret yelling, calling him bad names, making your grandma and your aunt suffer." "And about the fight?" "No. I don't regret the fight." Peter looked confused. "Why?" "Because the fight was necessary for the truth to come out. If we hadn't fought that day, maybe we would have kept lying to each other forever." "So fighting is sometimes good?" Robert laughed at the simplicity of the question. "Fighting to hurt is bad, but fighting to solve problems can be necessary. What matters is how we fight and how we make peace afterward. And did you make peace properly? We did. Your father forgave me. I apologized sincerely, and we all learned to talk better. Peter kept planting, satisfied with the answer. Grandpa, when I grow up, will I know how to talk to my family? You will, Robert assured him, because you're learning from a young age, because your family knows how to talk now, and if I have big problems, then you come talk to the family, just like your father did after he learned. And will the family help? Always. That night, during dinner with 3 generations at the table, Peter told them about his conversation with his grandfather. Dad, he said to Anthony, Grandpa told me that you forgave him for fighting with you. I did forgive him, Anthony confirmed. Was it hard to forgive? Anthony thought before answering. At first it was, Peter, because I was very hurt. But then I understood that Grandpa didn't want to hurt me. He was worried and scared. Scared of what? Scared that I wouldn't be able to take care of the family. Scared that our situation would become very difficult. And did it? It did for a while. But when everyone started talking and helping, it got easier. Sophia, who always listened to conversations but rarely participated, asked an unexpected question. Daddy, if that fight hadn't happened, would Peter and I exist? The question took everyone by surprise. Patricia looked at Sophia curiously. Why are you asking that, honey? Because if Dad hadn't dropped out of college to take care of Grandma, he wouldn't have met you at the hospital. And if he hadn't met you, we wouldn't have been born. An astonished silence fell over the table. It was true. Anthony had met Patricia precisely because he worked at the hospital where Carol was receiving treatment. Sophia, Carol said, moved, you're very smart. You're right. If things had happened differently, you and Peter might not have been born. So was the fight good? Peter asked, confused. The fight brought good consequences, Robert explained. But not because it was good, because we knew how to turn something bad into something good. How? Sophia wanted to know. By learning from mistakes, Jennifer answered, using suffering to grow. And especially, Anthony added, not letting the fight destroy the love, finding love through the fight. Gabriel, in his high chair, clapped his hands without understanding the conversation, but feeling the loving atmosphere of the family. Do you know what this means? Carol asked, looking at her 3 grandchildren. What? All 3 asked. Gabriel just babbled. It means that you are the fruits of the love that was born from forgiveness. It means that you exist because our family knew how to rebuild itself. Peter and Sophia became thoughtful, trying to understand the depth of what their great-grandmother had said. Grandma Carol, Peter finally said, does that mean we're special? It means that you are loved, she answered. Very loved. By a family that knows the value of love because they almost lost it. 20 years after the famous Christmas dinner, the Miller family was gathered for a very special celebration. Peter, now 13 years old, had won a school essay contest with a text about family. Sophia, 10 years old, had held an exhibition of drawings about the family's history. Gabriel, 7 years old, was learning to play the guitar with his great-grandfather Robert. The family had grown even more. Jennifer and Richard had 2 more children, Anna, 5 years old, and Michael, 3 years old. Anthony and Patricia decided not to have more children, focusing all their attention on Peter and Sophia. Robert, at 75 years old, was still active and healthy, dividing his time between his grandchildren and writing a second book, this one about how to be a grandfather. Carol, at 72, had been in complete remission for 15 years and had become a reference in cancer patient support groups. Grandpa Robert, Peter said during Sunday lunch, can I read my essay to the family? Of course, my champion, we really want to hear it. Peter stood up, took a piece of paper and began to read. Family isn't perfect. Family is real. My name is Peter Miller, and I want to tell you about my family. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. 20 years ago, before I was born, my family went through the biggest crisis in its history. My grandfather fought with my father, my great-grandmother hid a serious illness, and everyone almost separated forever. But you know what they discovered? That family isn't about never having problems. Family is about facing problems together. My father dropped out of college to take care of my sick great-grandmother. My grandfather didn't know that and got angry. My great-grandmother didn't tell anyone she had cancer because she wanted to protect the family. When everything exploded, each one discovered that the other was trying to do the right thing, just in the wrong way. And you know what they did? They talked. They apologized. They started over. Today my family is the closest I know. Not because we never fight, we do sometimes, but because we know how to talk after the fight. We know how to say sorry. We know how to forgive. I learned from my family that true love isn't the kind that never faces storms. It's the kind that learns to dance in the rain. And that family isn't perfect. Family is real, and real family is much more beautiful than perfect family. When Peter finished reading, there weren't any dry eyes at the table. Robert stood up and hugged his grandson. "Peter, you understood our story better than many adults." "That's because I've lived it since I was little," Peter replied, "and because you always told the truth, even the bad parts." "And you won the contest with this essay?" Carol asked, moved. "I did. And you know what the teacher said?" "What?" "That she rarely sees children who understand so much about family. That most write about perfect movie families, but I wrote about a real family." Sophia got up from the table and returned with a folder of drawings. "Now I want to show my drawings," she said. She opened the folder and began showing her works. There was a drawing of the family fighting at Christmas long ago with everyone sad. There was a drawing of the family talking, with hearts around. There was a drawing of the great-grandmother in the hospital, with Daddy holding her hand. There was a drawing of everyone together in the backyard, smiling. "Sophia," Patricia said, impressed, "your drawings tell our whole story." "It's because our story is beautiful," Sophia replied simply. "There are sad parts, but the ending is happy." "And it's not over yet," Gabriel added, suddenly speaking seriously for a 7-year-old. "Our story is still happening." "What do you mean?" Anna, the 5-year-old, asked. "Because every day we make a little more of our story. When we talk, when we help each other, when we play together." Michael, the 3-year-old, didn't understand much of the conversation, but was happy seeing the whole family gathered. "Grandma Carol," Anna asked, "do you still get sad when you remember the time you were sick?" Carol thought before answering. "Sometimes I do, sweetheart, but you know what makes me happy?" "What?" "Seeing that difficult time brought our family closer. That suffering turned into wisdom, that pain turned into love. And that now you know how to take care of each other," Michael completed, surprising everyone with his understanding. Robert looked around the table, seeing 3 generations gathered, talking about love, forgiveness, and family. "You know what makes me proudest?" "What?" everyone asked. "It's seeing that Peter, Sophia, Gabriel, Anna, and Michael are growing up in a family that knows how to love for real. That when they have their own families, they'll know how to make it work. Because they'll know how to talk," Peter said, "and say sorry when they make mistakes," Sophia added, "and help when someone needs it," Gabriel completed. "And never hide important problems," Anna said, showing she understood the lesson too. "And always love," Michael finished. Carol was deeply moved seeing the 5 children understanding and internalizing the family's values. "You know you're special?" she asked. "Why?" they wanted to know. "Because you were born into a family that knows the value of love. Because you'll grow up knowing that family is the safest place in the world. Because you'll be adults who know how to build strong relationships. And because you'll teach this to your own children," Anthony added. "Will our story continue?" Peter asked. "It will," Robert assured, "because you'll write the next chapters, with your own families, your own challenges, your own victories. But always remembering what you learned here," Carol completed. In the afternoon, while the children played in the backyard and the adults rested in the living room, Robert had a deep reflection. "Guys," he said, "do you realize our family has become a legend?" "How so?" Jennifer asked. "We've become an example for other families. Our story is told in universities, hospitals, therapy groups. Our children are growing up knowing they're part of something special. And the most beautiful part," Carol added, "is that we didn't do anything extraordinary. We just learned to talk, to apologize, to start over. Maybe that's exactly what makes it extraordinary, Patricia suggested. In a world where families fall apart over any problem, a family that rebuilds through problems is indeed extraordinary. And that will be the legacy we leave, Anthony said. Not money, not property, but knowledge about how to truly love. And 5 children who know the value of family, Richard completed. That night Robert wrote in his diary, a habit he had developed since reconciling with the family. Today I realized our story isn't just ours. It belongs to all families who once got lost and found each other. It belongs to all fathers who made mistakes and learned. It belongs to all mothers who suffered in silence and discovered the strength of trusting. It belongs to all children who sacrificed small dreams and found bigger ones. It belongs to all families who discovered that true love grows through difficulties, not in spite of them. 20 years after that terrible Christmas dinner, I understand it was necessary. It was the rock bottom we needed to hit to propel our flight. It was the darkness that made us appreciate the light. And today, seeing my grandchildren grow up in an environment of love, honesty, and communication, I know our pain was worth it. That our story, however painful it was, is creating better generations. Peter, Sophia, Gabriel, Anna, and Michael will never need to discover the value of family through nearly losing it. They've known since they were little that family is a safe place, a safe harbor, a safe love, and that is the greatest gift we can leave the world. Children who know how to love. 25 years after the dinner that changed everything, the Miller family was gathered for a very special occasion. Peter had just graduated from medical school. At 18, he had chosen to pursue a career in healthcare, inspired by the family's story and the example of care he grew up witnessing. Dr. Peter Miller, Robert said during the toast at the graduation party. Who would have thought the grandson born from love that was reborn from crisis would become a doctor? Peter, now a serious and dedicated young man, smiled with tears in his eyes. Grandpa, I only became a doctor because I grew up seeing what true care looks like. You and Dad taught me that medicine isn't just about illness. It's about people, about families, about love. Anthony, now 51, was emotional seeing his son pursue a career in healthcare. Son, I'm sure you'll be a different kind of doctor, because you know every patient has a family, a story, a heart that needs care along with the body. And because you know the importance of talking with the family, Carol added. At 82, she remained lucid and active, now a great-grandmother to 8 grandchildren. Sophia, at 15, was finishing high school and had already decided she wanted to be a psychologist, specializing in family therapy. Peter, she said, when you're a doctor and I'm a psychologist, we'll be able to help families like ours. How so? Gabriel asked. At 12, he was the family artist, always drawing and already showing interest in architecture. Families going through crises, Sophia explained. Peter will handle the medical side and I'll handle the emotional side. Anna, 10 years old, who wanted to be a teacher, made a profound observation. They're going to teach other families what our family learned. Michael, 8 years old, the shyest but also the most observant, added, our story will keep helping people even when we're adults. Robert, now 80 years old but still strong and present, looked at all his descendants and was moved. Do you know what's most amazing? What? Everyone asked. It's seeing that our crisis 25 years ago planted seeds that are still sprouting today. Peter is going to be a doctor because he saw how important it is to care for others. Sophia is going to be a psychologist because she understood the value of communication. Anna wants to be a teacher because she knows how important it is to teach values. And Gabriel is going to be an architect because he learned that family is about building something solid together, Carol added, looking at her artistic grandson. And Michael? Patricia asked. What do you want to be when you grow up? Michael thought for a moment before answering. I want to be a dad. The simple and profound answer left everyone in silence. Just that? Jennifer asked, smiling. I want to be a dad like Grandpa Robert became, like Daddy, like Uncle Anthony. I want to have a family that truly loves each other. Robert stood up, walked over to Michael, and picked him up, even though the boy was already big. Michael, that's the most beautiful dream I've ever heard. because being a dad isn't a profession, it's a mission, and you already know what the mission is: to love, to care, to be present. And to talk, Michael added. And to forgive, Peter completed. And to start over as many times as needed, Sophia finished. That night after the party, when everyone had left and only Robert, Carol, Anthony, Patricia, Peter and Sophia were in the house, the others had gone to their respective homes, Robert made a proposal. How about we go to the cemetery to visit Carol's parents and my parents? Now? Carol asked, surprised. Now. I want them to know how beautiful our family has become. I want to tell them about the great-grandchildren, about Peter graduating in medicine, about our story. The idea sounded strange at first, but everyone understood Robert's feeling. It's a good idea, Carol agreed. They would be proud to see how we overcame our difficulties. And how we built a strong family for the next generations, Anthony added. They all went together to the cemetery, bringing flowers and Peter's diploma. At the grandparents' grave, Robert spoke as if they were listening. Dad, Mom, Carol lost her parents very early, but you got to see our family begin. I want you to know that we learned to make it work, that we have 5 wonderful grandchildren, that our family has become an example for other families. Carol knelt beside her husband. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, thank you for raising a man who knew how to learn from his mistakes, who knew how to become a better father, an incredible grandfather, an example for the next generations. Peter approached and placed his diploma on the grave. Great-grandfather, great-grandmother, I graduated in medicine today. I'm going to care for people like you cared for our family. I'm going to honor the love you planted. Sophia took a flower and left it on the grave. Great-grandfather, great-grandmother, our family has become a beautiful story, a story of love that grows through hardships. You would be proud. When they returned home, everyone felt complete, as if the family were truly reunited, past and present connected. Do you know what I feel? Carol said, entering the house. What? Everyone asked. I feel that our story is complete, that we've gone through all the phases a family can go through, the crisis, the rebuilding, the consolidation, and now the continuity through the next generations. And do you know what's most beautiful? Robert added. It's that each generation will be better than the previous one, because they'll learn from our mistakes without having to make them. Peter, Sophia, and their cousins are going to be better parents than we were, Anthony said. And their children will be even better, Patricia added. That way our story keeps multiplying, improving, spreading, Carol concluded. Peter, looking at the whole family gathered in the living room, reflected deeply. Do you know what amazes me the most? What? To think that 25 years ago, in this very house, you almost destroyed each other. And today we are a family that serves as an example for other families. It's proof that it's never too late to start over, Robert said. And that true love always finds a way, Carol added. And that family is the most important thing in the world, Sophia completed. Because family is where we learn to love, Anthony finished. And so, 25 years after that terrible Christmas dinner that turned into a blessing, the Miller family reached the end of a story that actually had no end. Because stories of true love don't end, they endure, transform, and multiply. Peter became a compassionate doctor who treated every patient like family. Sophia became a psychologist specializing in family reconciliation. Gabriel became an architect who built homes designed to bring families together. Anna became a teacher who taught human values along with her subjects. Michael became the father he dreamed of being, raising his children in the same loving environment he had received. And they all told their children the story of the Christmas dinner that changed everything. The story of how a family almost fell apart and found itself stronger. The story of how true love grows through hardships, not in spite of them. The story of how a family discovered it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this family overcoming story. Have you experienced something similar in your family? Do you believe that dialogue and forgiveness can truly transform relationships? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Your experience may help other families going through difficult times. Thank you very much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.